As Imam Abdul Malik noted before when he was announcing that this truly is a special night together, as I'm going to be in conversation with our dear brother Fawaz al-Hasban, who is a dear community member from Kuwait, who's been in the US for roughly 3 years, and inshallah momentarily we'll learn more about his story and he'll share with us some more about his work and his own personal life and a lot of the essential lessons that we can take away from himself and from his family. I wanted to give you a little bit of a backstory about why he's here. So this past Sunday, we had our community hike. And it was a really beautiful time together as a community for those of you who were there. And mashallah, as we were getting ready to go, Brother Fawaz showed up with his 3 beautiful children and a red cart. And we were getting ready to go, and mashallah, the terrain, let's just say, for the hike was not so accessible for the circumstances that he had, right? And he came to me and he said, Shaykh, perhaps the location is not so friendly for those who have disabilities and for the needs that he particularly had. And subhanallah, he was true and he was correct, and that was good guidance and advice for us to consider for our next hike. But what was beautiful was that did not stop him and from bringing his 3 children and his red cart with him on this journey. And it was not an easy hike, given the circumstances. It required a lot of support for the whole process to kind of move along smoothly. But he himself and his 3 children were in beautiful spirits throughout the time. And when we finally, after I think 2 hours of hiking, we arrived at the picnic area, I was able to have a conversation with Brother Fawaz, who I've been seeing over the past 2 years since I've been here and there, salams from afar. But I really got to know his story. And his story is a profound one. Inshallah, I don't want to share it myself. I want him to share more about it. But I felt so overwhelmed by the beauty that he exuded and how he spoke about his 3 children who are all disabled, and how he was elated by the warmth and the spirit of community that he experienced in that hike. So much of it showed me how, number one, as a community, we have a lot of work to do to support one another and to care for one another. But it really compelled me to highlight the topic of disability. And that's why, for those of you who attended the khutbah, I spoke almost entirely about the topic of disability and trying to give a prophetic lens to this particular issue. And before we kind of have Brother Fawaz start off, I wanted to share one hadith that I think captures the spirit that we should all engender when thinking about our communal needs, our broad communal needs, and especially the topic of disability, which are a segment of our community who really very often are struggling and physically incapacitated in a way that requires not just family members and close relatives to support, but rather broader social considerations, communal considerations to support those of us who have those particular needs. The Prophet ﷺ says, مَثَلُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ فِي تَوَادِّهِمْ وَتَرَاحُمِهِمْ وَتَعَاطُفِهِمْ كَالْجَسَدِ الْوَاحِدِ. The Prophet ﷺ says the example of the believers in their wood, in their unconditional love for one another, and in their rahmah for one another, and in their compassion for one another, is like one body. If one part of the body is in pain, then the remainder of the body will stay awake at night, anxious and worried, and in a feverish state, concerned about that one part of the body that is in pain. And subhanAllah, when the hike really highlighted for me, as I was reflecting with Brother Fawzan at the end of the hike, how he was so thankful that all these different community members that he had never met were rushing, one of them holding his oldest son hand, and then the other one holding his middle son hand. And then we had Brother Arman, I don't know if he's here. Is he here, Arman? He's not here, but he was carrying the red carriage, mashallah, the red cart. And but I wanted, before I pass it over, I wanted to share, what Brother Fawzan said to me. He said, this was, one of the first times since I've been in Boston that I felt that I really had family. Because all of the brothers and sisters, we were roughly 60 or 70, rushed to support him and to help him with his kids and to carry, to just be a guide, one for carry the carriage. And he was able to himself enjoy the hike. And he had to just, manage his younger son, Salih. But, he really was in a state of shukr and thankfulness. And I felt myself that we as a community have fallen short. That was the sense that I get, that this is the first time in his 3 years in Boston, and this is for the first time that he feels this genuine sense of family. And this goes back to the spirit of community that we've been talking about in the paradigm of living prophetically. This genuine, intimate mu'akha, brotherhood and sisterhood in Islam, is one where we understand each other's stories, we learn each other's stories, and we're genuinely in the service of one another and in the care of one another. And no one in the community should be alone, struggling to navigate their own affairs. And not to say that he's struggling, mashallah, he has a spirit that will, bi'idhnillah, lift us all up. You'll see it now, inshallah. But if any of us need help, we should know that there is access to help in our community. So may Allah help facilitate a genuine spirit of community. And what's beautiful about Brother Fawaz, is that what he had in the red card were his teapots and his coffee pots. And he said, al-izba, his izba, which is the generosity of his people, where he comes from, the Bedouin people of Kuwait, where they cannot have such a gathering with people and not bring coffee and tea. And although he was, taking care of his 3 kids, making sure he was rushing to make the entire group tea and coffee for us. Where we should have been making tea and coffee for him, he was making tea and coffee for us. And it was beautiful tea and beautiful coffee. As well, he brought dates. MashaAllah, he was extremely thoughtful. And this is what Brother Arman, who I just saw walking in, this is what he was carrying the whole time. And alhamdulillah, it was a beautiful, beautiful time together. And I am genuinely, sincerely blessed to have really got to know Brother Fawaz and learn his story. And I hope, inshallah, his story inspires you just as it inspired me to give a khutbah about this topic today. Barakallahu feekum. So with that, inshallah, I ask Brother Fawaz to share, whatever you want to share, your story, some of your experiences. And I know you do a lot of work in this space. You can have this one. Bismillah. شغال. Okay, خلاص. Barakallahu feekum. Fadal.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulullah. Forgive me, brothers and sisters, I prefer to speak in Arabic than I speak in English.
I'll translate, don't worry, inshallah.
بداية حياتي أنا بدأت من 94 تقريبا. أول طفل معاق جاني اسمه عبد الله الكبير.
His first child that Allah blessed him with, who was disabled, was Abdullah in 94.
كنت شاب لسه في مقتبل العمر وأنا تزوجت بدري، يعني كان عمري 18 سنة ما تزوجت.
He was 18 when he got married, so it was a very young year for him.
ولما الإنسان يرزق بطفل ويكون معاق طبعا هذا الشيء ما هو بسيط على الأسرة.
When you get married and you have a child and this child's disabled, it's not an easy thing for the family.
الإعاقة لها صدمة. لما الإنسان يكون عنده معاق هي تسبب صدمة، وأشكال الصدمة متعددة، هي 8 أشكال تقريبا.
When you have a disabled child, it causes a type of trauma, and these traumas can come in multiple forms and multiple colors.
ممكن تكون الانسحاب من المجتمع، ممكن تكون تبادل اتهامات في الأسرة، ممكن تكون التصدع الأسري، الاكتئاب والقلق والبحث عن التشخيص.
So there are multiple former traumas. There can be social retreat, where you feel like you no longer belong in society. Family members accusing one another. It causes all sorts of internal strife and challenges, and then also emotional and psychological ones.
مريت التجربة الأولى كانت تجربة الإحباط والانسحاب من المجتمع.
He said I went through 3 experiences. And the first was a type of despair and social retreat.
التجربة الثانية كانت يعني اكتشاف الإعاقة والبحث عن الأشخاص المعاقين.
The second was discovering this idea of disability and looking further to get more resources about this topic of disability.
والتجربة الثالثة في حياتي كانت مرحلة الانطلاقة والعطاء.
And the third period in my life was the period of moving forward and giving.
مثل ما ذكرت ان اشكال الصدمة متعددة وكلها سلبية الا واحدة ايجابية.
Everything, all the different types of traumas or experiences that are intense are generally negative, and then there are those that are very positive.
وهي روح الإعلاء والمثل والتسامي.
It is the spirit of كم مرة؟
روح الإعلاء
الإعلاء, which is like an uplifted
والتسامي.
and being spirited and happy about the decree.
كيف الإنسان يتعالى على جراحاته ويسمو بنفسه ويكون مثل الأعلى يحدث تغيير في نفسه وفي أسرته وفي المجتمع.
How do you embrace this particular trauma or difficulty? You overcome it, and then you become spirited through it, and then through that you become a source of change for others.
لما الإنسان يتفكر بعطاء الله سبحانه وتعالى وأن هناك ابتلاء، لما الله سبحانه وتعالى رزقني 4 أولاد معاقين.
When you think about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala having blessed me with 4 children who are all disabled,
الله سبحانه وتعالى يقول ألف لام ميم أحسب الناس أن يتركوا أن يقولوا آمنا وهم لا يفتنون ولقد فتنا الذين من قبلهم فلا يعلمن الله الذين صدقوا ولا يعلمن الكاذبين.
Don't we, when we see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us with 4 children that are disabled, don't we recall the verse of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala where Allah says, do people think that they will say I believe and not be tested? Verily we have tested those who come before them to see who is truthful and who is lying in their commitment to Allah.
الله سبحانه وتعالى كمان يقول ولنبلونكم بشيء من الخوف والجوع ونقص من الأموال والأنفس والثمرات وبشر الصابرين الذين إذا أصابتهم مصيبة قالوا إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون أولئك على صلوات من ربهم ورحمة وأولئك هم المهتدون.
And the beautiful verse that he is reciting, that is the verse of ibtila, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may test you in all multiple forms, in your wealth, in your comfort, in your food. And it is those who are patient in the face of this, who are given rif'ah, upliftment, and those will have salawat upon them, alayhim salawat. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will pray upon them.
فالله سبحانه وتعالى يبتلي الإنسان ليختبره ويهذبه لا ليعذبه.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests the person in this way, not to torture, right, but to challenge, to test them. We should internalize that this is not a punishment or a type of torment or torture from Allah.
وأشد الناس بلاءً هم الأنبياء ثم الصالحون فالصالحون فالصالحون.
And the people who are tested the most and challenged the most are the prophets, and then the righteous and the righteous, and so on and so forth.
وكلما كان الابتلاء شديد كانت الدرجات العلى في الجنة شديدة.
And just
عفواً كبيرة يعني.
No, just as as you know, there's a proportionality between the extent to which the challenges in this dunya are intense, and the more intense they are in this dunya, then you know that the upliftment in Jannah is higher and higher and as intense.
طبعا بالنسبة لي كشاب وعندي 4 أطفال معاقين، كل إنسان يحلم أن يكونوا أبناء مهندسين، طيارين، أطباء.
As a parent with 4 children who are disabled, you have dreams that you would want your child to become a pilot, an engineer, a doctor, etc.
بالنسبة لي لم تتكسر أحلامي ولم ينتهي سقف أحلامي، بل ارتفع سقف أحلامي إلى أعلى من هذه الدنيا الدنية، بل ارتفع إلى الله سبحانه وتعالى وإلى جنات العلا.
Allahu Akbar. He says that don't think for a moment that the ceiling of my dreams has been limited. You know, you may have these worldly dreams of becoming a doctor or a lawyer or something, but my dreams now have broken, the atmosphere of this simple world into the highest levels of Jannah. And so I have high hopes and aspirations that go beyond the simple dunya to the profound pastures of the afterlife.
ودي أتكلم عن نفسي أكثر، يعني كيف الإنسان يكون عنده روح الإعلاء والمثل والتسامي.
كمان مرة؟
ودي أتكلم عن نفسي أكثر، كيف الإنسان يكون عنده روح الإعلاء والمثل والتسامي، أي ما يكون عنده صندة الإعاقة وينسحب المجتمع، كيف يقدم لما يكون عنده طفل معاق في المجتمع.
And so he wants to touch upon the particular topic of how do you embrace this particular test of having a child with disability and maintain that beautiful high spirit, being able to overcome the challenge and not only overcome it but grow through it, become spirited through it, and then become a force of beautiful change in the society. ولو كمان لو تحكي لهم عن نوع الإعاقة. نعم.
طيب الأولاد الحمد لله عندنا يعني جينيتك، هي حالة وراثية اسمها أشر سيندروم. الأولاد كلهم يعتبرون deaf blind plus autism.
So his children, the particular type of disability they have is Asher syndrome, which is deaf and blind, as well as autism, and as well as being struggling with balance. Yes.
بالنسبة لي الحمد لله يعني صارت عندي روح الإعلاء والمثل والتسامي، وبديت يعني أغير من حياتي ومن حياة أسرتي، وبل وصل التغيير إلى المجتمع.
And so he started to try to really work on himself to grow through these particular disabilities, to embrace that high spirit, and so that inshallah he can impact his family in a positive way as well as in society.
كنت موظف بسيط وإنسان ما لي أي نشاط في المجتمع في وزارة المواصلات في قسم البريد، ومن ثم انتقلت ويعني دخلت دورات تخصصية في الخدمة الاجتماعية وخدمة المعاقين، وانتقلت إلى المجلس الأعلى لشؤون المعاقين في الكويت.
طيب. So he started off with a simple job in the Ministry of Transportation in the section of Barid, يعني
البريد البوست اوفيس. بس لما الله سبحانه وتعالى أطفال المعاقين انتقلت بحياتي.
Now, so he started off with a simple job in like the post office of the Ministry of Transportation, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed him with these children. So he started to really explore and learn much more about disability. He started to get some training and learning about that space until he entered into the Ministry of
Higher Council of Disabled Affairs.
Higher Council of Disabled Affairs.
أي نعم. فالله سبحانه وتعالى الحمد لله يعني وفقني وثقة المسؤولين، ويعني في عطائي وفي حبي لهذه الفئة وانتمائي لهم، يعني مسكت رئيس مكتب العلاقات العامة والإعلام الخارجي في المجلس الأعلى لشؤون المعاقين.
So mashallah, I don't know the exact technical translation of his position.
Head Office Public Relation and Higher Council of Disabled Affairs.
There you go. Mashallah. High post. Mashallah.
في الكويت قدمت الكثير من المشاريع، مشاريع خاصة في البيئة وكيف احنا نطور البيئة للأشخاص المعاقين، مشاريع خاصة في تأهيل المعاقين وتشغيله في المجتمع، مشاريع كثيرة جدا بإمكانكم الاطلاع عليها من خلال يعني البحث باسم فواز الحسبان.
So there are many projects that he institutionalized and initiated in Kuwait that you can find, projects that have to do with all sorts of initiatives for disabled people in terms of access and services in society and so on and so forth.
الشيء اللي الله سبحانه وتعالى وفقني فيه، وكان يعني في إحدى المرات شاركت في مؤتمر على مستوى الوطن العربي اسمه ندوة التشريعات البرلمانية الخامسة للإعاقة. فالتجارب اللي أنا قمت فيها تم توثيقها في هذا المؤتمر، ونزلت فيها التوصية أن تعمم هذه التجربة في الوطن العربي.
And so the particular experience that he had and the growth that he went through and all the challenges, and then ultimately what he started to produce in terms of initiative, they were confirmed in a particular conference. The technical term of the conference تعرفه بالإنجليزي ولا؟ اسم المؤتمر. So this was a parliamentary conference to put down a type of legislation specifically for disabled people. And so his experience was embraced and was taken, was actually was affirmed in that legislation.
ودي أركز بس على الحملة هذه، الحملة اسمها الكويت بيئة صالحة للمعاقين، كانت من 2006 إلى 2010.
From 2006 to 2010, he had a particular social, almost you can call it a movement, that was titled Kuwait as a environment that is suitable for those with disabilities.
الحملة هذه اللي تميزت فيه إن شارك فيها أكثر من 12 وزير و8 أعضاء وسياسيين وإعلاميين في الحملة.
In this particular like public action, there were 12 ministers, also a number of 12 ministers, also media personalities and high officials.
الوزراء يعني وهي فيها شيء من الطرافة. لما جيت المستشارة الوزير وطلبت منها أن الوزير يشارك معي في الحملة أنه يقعد على كرسي معاقين ويتجول في السيتي سنتر في الكويت، قالت هذا الكلام مستحيل، كيف أنت وزير يتمشى بين الناس على الكرسي؟ دور شيء، إذا عندك أوراق جيب، إحنا ممكن نعتمدها لك يعني.
Subhanallah. So he had went to the assistant to the minister to say, we want the minister, right, which is a high official, to sit on a wheelchair and to go around the city center in Kuwait. And so she said, that's going to be very difficult to have the minister himself on the wheelchair. Just give us some documents, and if you need them, whatever, affirmed by the government, we'll take care of the documents.
بالنسبة لي المستحيل هو حاجز فكري، هو ما شيء موجود في المجتمع أو في الحياة، هو حاجز فكري يحول دون تحقيق أهدافنا.
So this idea of impossibility, she said it's impossible that he would do this. He's saying that impossible is it's a psychological or intellectual construct that we place upon ourselves that limit us from the type of beautiful growth that we can have socially as individuals and what we can actually accomplish as a people.
ما في شيء مستحيل.
Nothing is impossible.
نعم. فأنا يعني عملت بطريقة مختلفة، رحت أول شيء للبرلمانيين وكلمتهم، بعدين رحت البرلماني راح معي للوزير وكلمناه شخصيا من غير يكون في واسطة بيني وبينه.
So he started to try. He said, I have to get this done. So he went to parliament members, started to tell them, we need to have this happen. So one of the parliament members went with him to speak to the minister.
ولما عرضت على الوزير الفكرة يعني رحب فيها وقال بالعكس أنا راح أشارك يعني.
And when the minister ultimately was presented with the idea, not through his assistant but directly, he said, I am very happy about this idea and I want to participate.
في حملتنا كنا ننتقي، يعني كانت في أهداف موجهة، فكنا ننتقي أصحاب القرار وأصحاب يعني صانع القرار ومتخذ القرار في المجتمع على أساس إنه يشاركون معنا في الحملة.
So we also wanted to target, he's saying, we want to target people of influence in society so that they are part of it, so that I guess there is greater attraction to the particular cause that he's calling towards.
فكانوا مشاركين معنا الإعلام والبرلمان وأيضا الوزراء والمسؤولين الكبار في الدولة.
So there were, as he said, there were media personalities, ministers, high officials in the government and so on.
وكنا نركز على وزراء محددين وهم المتخصصين في شؤون الاكسسبيليتي في البيئة يعني.
So we were specifically also targeting those high officials and ministers who could impact the questions of accessibility in society.
واحد منهم وزير الأشغال، فأنا خذيته عند الحواجز المادية الموجودة في البيئة.
So he took وزير الأشغال, someone helped
وزير الأشغال والبلدية. وخذيناه في السيتي سنتر كان في حواجز بمعنى الشغلات تعيق يعني المعاقين عن الوصول للأماكن اللي يحتاجونها يعني.
So the minister, I guess, who manages the social space or the public space, he was able to take him and show him how in the public sphere, and especially the city center of Kuwait, there are so many inhibiting or hurdles in terms of how you can move around as a disabled person.
الوزير كان جالس على كرسي المعاقين، فلما جينا عند الحاجز هذا قلت يعني كمل عدوا النقطة الثانية، قال ما أستطيع أقوم من الكرسي، قلت ما تقوم، هذا التحدي اللي إحنا عاوزينك تعيشه اليوم يعني.
Subhanallah. So when he had the minister on the wheelchair and they were in the Kuwait city center, and the particular hurdle came about where they couldn't move, he tried to get up. He said, no, you can't get up. You have to experience the full experience of someone who's disabled, who has to now deal with this particular challenge, and you have to figure out how this could actually become a circumstance that changes for those with disabilities.
وفضل الله وكرم الحمد لله بعد 4 سنوات احنا كان عندنا هدف الكويت بيئة صالح للمعاقين 2006-2010 ختمنا يعني الحملة في 2010 وكان ختامها في حلقة نقاشية في المجلس البلدي ان ننشئ كود كويتي خاص في معايير البناء واشتراطات البناء. ما
شاء الله. So after 4 years of this type of activism and work that he was engaged in for the sake of disabled people, ultimately they were able to institutionalize codes in terms of construction codes and other types of codes that would have to be implemented to ensure that those who are disabled or the needs of disabled people were going to be recognized and cared for.
الحواجز الوزير ارجع ثاني مره الوزير لما جينا عند الحاجز ما نضطر لما يرجع المكتب وهو كان في مكانه رفع التليفون واتصل بالوكيل قال كيف الحاجز هذا موجود في السوق وفورا ازالوه مو ثاني يوم ازالوه يعني جت سيارات وشالت الحواجز هذه اللي كانت موجوده.
So he called the minister in that moment called whoever he needed to call in the city to say come, and these blockades or these types of hurdles need to be removed immediately. So it didn't take some time. It was an immediate motion that was put into play.
والحمد لله في نهايه الحمله تم انشاء الكود الكويتي وصار قانون وملزم كل المباني والمرافق والخدمات
ما شاء الله.
انها يعني تكون سهله الوصول للاشخاص
ما
المعاقين.
شاء الله. So ultimately this code that was eventually put into place became central in facilitating the needs of the disabled people in society.
وهذه روح الاعلاء والمثل والتسامي اللي انا اتكلم عليها، كيف الانسان يعلو بجراحاته وتسمو نفسه ويكون ايضا مثل اعلى يحدث تغيير في نفسه وفي اسرته وفي المجتمع.
And this is particularly what he's referring to as that spirit, in that he was a simple, normal person, nothing special about who he was in that moment, but suddenly Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed him with these 4 children who became a serious challenge and test for him to overcome. But not only did he overcome it, bifadlillahi ta'ala, it became a source of him becoming with a person of high spirits that changed his own life and his own motivations and how he thought about his role in society, and is ultimately was able to have a positive impact on his family, and then alhamdulillah in large scale the community and the society at large. And that you can see in that, and this is just me now stealing the microphone for 30 seconds, you can see how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses people for khair regardless or despite of what they had considered for themselves. Here is a particular hardship that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala placed upon him and his family, and Allah gave him and enriched him with a certain ruh, a certain spirit, that he was able to grow and then able to become a tremendous positive change in society for people who needed, who had these special needs, and then for the government and for the people in charge to facilitate for those needs in society.
احنا نشجع الروح هذه، والروح هذه سهله انه نوصلها. الروح هذه كيف نوصلها احنا؟
This spirit is a spirit that is easy to inculcate and to develop within oneself. How do we then have this spirit come about?
أول حاجة لازم الإيمان بالقضاء والقدر.
The first step in developing this high spirit is belief in qada and qadr, belief in the decree and the destiny of Allah Jalla wa Ala.
ما أصابك لم يكن لأخطأك، وما أخطأك لم يكن ليصيبك.
What has afflicted you or has touched you was never meant to not touch you or afflict you, and what does not touch you or afflict you is not meant to touch you or affect you.
والرضا والقبول بعطاء الله سبحانه وتعالى ومنه كرمه.
And it is the rida, the contentment and the acceptance of what Allah Jalla wa Ala has given you, knowing full well that everything that comes your way is from Allah, not from anyone else. It is from Allah. So you have a deep type of rida, contentment with Allah's decree.
مو بس يعني رضا وخلاص، لا أيضا نفرح بعطاء الله سبحانه وتعالى ونكون سعيدين بهذا الشيء اللي الله سبحانه وتعالى من فيه.
It is not just a matter of having contentment, but it is being in a state of farah, joy with the decree of Allah Jalla wa Ala. On that note, Brother Fawaz, when we were in the hike, and his 2 kids, mashallah, are 2 of them are sitting right here in the audience. As he was talking to me about them, he was saying, people may think that this is, they feel bad or feel sorry. He said, don't. He said, these, as I said in the khutbah, these are my heavenly flowers. And I said this in the khutbah today. This is the word, the language that he taught me. These are my heavenly flowers. So it's not just a matter of, and he was telling me that one of his children, he screams a lot, and that scream has transformed for him into beautiful sounds, beautiful music. So that not only is a matter of rida, just being, begrudgingly accepting or accepting, but rather being full of pleasure and joy and seeing the beauty in the decree of Allah Jalla wa Ala.
أيضا يجب أن نحب هذا الشيء، يعني نفرح فيه ونحبه.
We find pleasure and we love that thing.
فالدافع الكبير يعني لما أنا أحب الشيء هذا راح أكون مبدع فيه.
When I love something, I will become mubdi'. I will become creative and thoughtful and intentional about how I will treat this matter in my life.
والحمد لله يعني الله سبحانه وتعالى من علي وجيت هني. أنا عشت التحدي في الكويت وقدمنا مشاريع كثيرة، لكن للأسف أن الكويت ما كان فيها برامج تعليم يعني تناسب مع إعاقات أولادي.
And so in Kuwait, he found challenges to facilitate the needs of his children, specifically in the space of education. And so,
في يعني التعدد الإعاقة عندهم هم الصم وهم مكفوفين وهم يعني أوتيزم، فهذا الشيء ما في أي برنامج. فكانوا في مركز رعاية نهارية، المركز هذا كان يعلمهم كيف ينتظموا في المجموعة، كيف يهتم بنظافته الشخصية، وكان هذا ما يلبي طموحي ولا يلبي يعني رغبات أيضا أبنائي وطموحهم.
So in terms of his children, as we said, they have the disability of deafness, and they have blindness, and they have autism. So they are afflicted with these three. And so the only services that were there for him in Kuwait were basic services that dealt with maybe, you know, sanitary states, like keeping, you know, clean and so on and so forth. But in terms of what he wanted for the service that he was hoping for his children in terms of education, he had greater wants and desires, and his children's also personal aspirations in this regard.
وانتقلنا بحياتنا لأمريكا هني ونعيش في بوسطن مع الأولاد على أساس إنه يكملوا تعليمهم، مو بس تأهيل وريهابيليشن، لا أنا يعني أعطيه الفرصة إنه يتعلم، وأيضا كيف إنه يندمج في المجتمع، وكيف إنه يكون عنده يعني برامج عمل في المستقبل، لأن هذا ما راح يكون موجود في الكويت.
So he, mashallah, brother Fawaz lives here by himself with his three boys for the past 3 years, and have them enrolled in which programs? Baramij. Perkins. Deaf and blind. So Perkins, and in this space, he's able to find that his children are developing the skill sets and some of the tools that they can use to become more engaged members of society.
فأحمد يعني عنده طموح، وهو يحب عالم الطيران ويحب المطارات ويحب، فأنا أشجع فيه الهوايات هذه، والحمد لله هو مبدع. وأنا كان ودي إنه يكون معاي اليوم، وإنه يكون في شاشة واي واحد ممكن يسال عن اي مطار وهو راح يعطيه الكود. يمكن كثير منا نمر في مطارات وما نحفظ الكود. انا ما ادري اذا كان في يعني كيف انه ممكن طريقه، لكن انا كان ودي ان ابني يدخل تحدي مع احد من يحب يتحدى ابني في ان احنا ممكن نمر في مطارات كثيره بس ما نحفظ الكود ولا نعرف الكود. هو ما شاء الله حافظ كل كود مطارات تقريبا امريكا والعالم ما شاء الله، وانا انمي هذا الشيء فيه، بل يعني حبيت ان يكون هذا جول في السنوات الخمسة القادمة إنه يشتغل في شركات طيران أو في مطارات يعني عالمية.
So Ahmed, his son, who's here, he's wearing the green shirt. Ahmed, so he's deaf and he's blind, right?
يعني blind تقريبا، هو عنده vision بس ما يعني بسيط جدا يعني.
بس أنت how do you communicate مع أحمد? Because I observed how you communicate. Because يعني I'll tell you what he just said, but I think how he communicates with Ahmed is also essential to this. كيفية الcommunication.
أحمد sign language touch. أحمد لغة الإشارة باللمس.
So he communicates with Ahmed. I've seen him do it. It's a type of sign language touch. So it's a lot of hand touching and then sign language, because he has very, very limited vision. But with that, and his autism, he knows all of the airport codes. And he wanted, Brother Fawaz wanted to actually have it, that his son comes up and he challenges any of you to to the airport codes, and so his aspiration for him, because he knows how much he loves, you know, the airline industry and airports and so on, he wants to help grow that love and that, you know, those aspirations that he has. And so he's keen and he's spending the time to help him grow in that regard.
فأنا أقول إن روح الإعلاء والمثل التسامي كيف ننميها عندنا.
So how do we continue to cultivate this high spirit within ourselves?
فإحنا أول شيء لازم نؤمن بالقضاء والقدر، ونؤمن بالبلاء، ونؤمن في الله سبحانه وتعالى خلق الابتلاء، وأيضا زف البشرى من سابع سمة، وبشر الصابرين الذين إذا أصابتهم مصيبة قالوا إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون أولئك على صلوات من ربهم ورحمة وأولئك هم المهتدون.
So it is internalizing in the deepest possible way the belief, the essential belief that this is from Allah, tests are from Allah Jalla wa Ala, that this was meant to come to us. And then on top of that, we embrace the celestial celebration, وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, give glad tidings to those who are patient, those that when they are afflicted with something they say, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un, that to Allah we belong and to Allah we shall return. أُولَٰئِكَ عَلَيْهِمْ صَلَوَاتٌ مِّن رَبِّهِمْ وَرَحْمَةٌ, that upon them are prayers from Allah and mercy. And this prayer, this salawat, subhanallah, jazakallah khair, these salawat that are from Allah, they are continuous. And that's what he was indicating right now. He's saying they continue to be the case. So you have this ibtila in your life, this challenge, this affliction in your life. These salawat, they don't discontinue. They are continual. And they are coming to you from the greatest and most celestial of realms.
كثير منا يقول إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون، إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون، بس ترى كثير منا ما يعرف شنو معنى إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون.
Many of us will say Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un, to Allah we belong and to Allah we shall return, but how many of us really know what this means?
كيف يعني إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون؟ إنا لله أنا وسمعي وبصري وعقلي وكل ما أملك من أنعام الله سبحانه وتعالى التي أعطاني إياها، وكل أنعام الله سبحانه وتعالى التي دفعها عني هي من الله وإلى الله.
All what this means is that everything that I am, myself, my eyes, my hearing, my speech, every single thing that makes me, or any of us who we are in our physical sense or psychological sense or intellectual sense, all of that belongs to Allah. And all of that Allah can take and Allah will take as He decides and as He decrees.
إن لله ما أعطى وإن لله ما أخذ وكل شيء عنده بأجل مسمى.
Every single thing belongs to Allah, that which He gives and that which He takes, and all of this is within an apportioned, decreed time.
فيعني مثل ما قلت إن نحب الأولاد ونرضى بالله سبحانه وتعالى ما قسم لنا، ومن ثم نكون الأسرة قد تكون هي الحاجز الأول في المجتمع، وقد تكون هي يعني الطاقة اللي تدفع بالمعاق إلى الأمام.
Subhanallah. He's saying that point one that many of us have to understand is that very often the first point of either inflection or deflection is the family and the home. If the home is a beautiful space and a spirited space, this will push the child or the family ahead and along, and this will ultimately drive the spirit of the society. But very often the home or the family is the most debilitating space when it comes to the growth and the spirit of this child and what they could ultimately mean in the greater social context. No. Further. So inshallah, I wanted to ask some. Also, I want to open up to the audience if any of you have questions. طيب, if you have some questions, you can pose them. We have anxious questions, or should I ask my question first? طيب, mashallah, we have a lot of hands. So let's take some questions, and in that I'll try to interject some questions as well. تفضل Ahmed. Why don't you get him the microphone?
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We use a lot of terms to refer people with disability, right? On the left side, we use like handicapped, crippled, disabled, and everything else. On the right side, we can use people with impairment, people with disability, or people with special needs. For some people, this term is just a term, but actually it's beyond terms. There's a lot of things behind it, like social movement, psychological construction, social construction behind it. And I've been spending maybe 4 years, working with people with disability, and they prefer to use the right terms, people with special needs, or people with disability, or people with impairment, instead of using disabled people or crippled people. And this term is very important, especially from psychological construction, especially if we use it a lot, every time, many times. Just give feedback about that one.
Can you introduce yourself?
Oh, yeah, my name is Soleh Ayubi.
Salahuddin?
Salahuddin Al Ayubi. I had PhD in rehab science.
PhD in
rehab science, rehabilitation science.
rehabilitation science.
Mhm.
MashaAllah. And you work with special needs.
Long time ago.
Uh-huh.
But right now I'm working for United Health Group, and we have some program for people with special needs as well.
طيب، قضية المسميات والتعريفات هي قضية جدلية ودائما تحضر في المؤتمرات والندوات. ترجم معي أول بأول؟
Naam. So this issue of mustalahat, of terms and terminology and language is a very common question that's brought up in conferences.
في فرق كبير بين سبيشال نيد اللي هو الاحتياجات الخاصة وبين الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة اللي هو الديسيبل.
There's a distinction between special needs and individuals with disabilities.
فكل شخص ذوي إعاقة هو ذوي احتياجات خاصة، لكن ليس العكس صحيح.
Everyone, كمان مرة?
كل شخص يعني ذوي إعاقة هو احتياجات خاصة، لكن ليس العكس صحيح.
Everyone that has disabilities
هي سبيشال نيد.
is a special needs, but not that everyone who's a special need is has
فكلنا ذوي
disabilities.
احتياجات خاصة. ممكن يعني مريض السكر احتياجات خاصة، ممكن الأم الحامل احتياجات خاصة، ممكن.
So, for example, if you have diabetes, you have special needs. There are multiple people who are not necessarily who are afflicted with disabilities, but are considered special needs individuals.
فتعريف الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة هو كل شخص يصاب باعتلالات طويلة الأجل تحد من قدراته الحسية أو الحركية أو الذهنية على تأمين مستلزماته على قدم المساواة مع الآخرين.
Okay, so كمان مرة. نعم, that was a big one.
تعريف الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة هو
نعم.
كل شخص يصاب.
The disabled. We're also kind of challenged on whether we call a person with disability or a disabled person. I think that's a part of what you're referring to. So the positive language is a person with a disability, correct? So let's use that. The person with a disability is the person who has
يصاب باعتلال طويلة الأجل
a long-term disability
تحد من قدراتها الحسية
that limits your senses
أو الحركية
or your movements
أو الذهنية
or your intellectual
على
capacity,
تأمين مستلزمات حياته
and that for you to care for yourself and to be safe and
على قدم
well,
المساواة مع الآخرين.
in terms of being equal with others.
لكن أنا لي تعريف مختلف شوية.
But he has a slightly different
أنا
definition.
أقول الإعاقة هي اختلاف طبيعي.
He says that disability is a natural differentiation
بين الناس
between people
في القدرات
in their capabilities
يعني الاحتياجات.
and in their needs.
والله سبحانه وتعالى جعل اختلاف في كل شيء.
And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made distinction or differentiation in all things.
الاختلاف في الشجر
In trees,
والحجر
in stone,
والاختلاف في اللسان
in tongues,
والاختلاف في الطول
in height,
والاختلاف في الوزن.
and in weight.
فاحنا كلنا مختلفين.
We are
ممكن
all
تجمعنا صالة
different.
واحدة لكن كل شخص له ميزة خاصة فيه.
We are all different and we are all unique in our own way.
لكن الإعاقة يعني
But disability
الفكرة راحت. الإعاقة مش إعاقة الجسد ولا إعاقة الحركة ولا إعاقة الحواس.
disability, as he's defining it, is not just to have a disability in your sense or in your motion or in your movement.
الإعاقة هي تكمن في تكافؤ الفرص والمساواة.
True disability is when there is a limitation in opportunities that facilitate equality between people.
لما ترسم السياسات العامة وما يراعى فيها كل الاختلافات بين الناس.
كمان مرة؟
لما ترسم السياسات العامة والإجراءات والتدابير والخطط الحكومية أقصد.
When you draw out the policies that are governmental policies that impact everyone.
ولسان حال الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة يقول أعطني حقوقي وسمني ما شئت.
And so he's saying that the lisanul hal, what the person who has a disability, what they are saying is, give me my needs, right, and call me what you desire. This is what he's saying.
والاتفاقية الدولية الخاصة في تحقيق الفرص وتكافؤ الفرص والمساواة يعني أبقت على مسمى الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة ونسفت كل المسميات الأخرى.
And so what he's saying is that a lot of these conferences they honed in on one مسمى.
الاتفاقية الدولية الخاصة هذه الاتفاقيات مع الأمم المتحدة.
This is a UN pact that says what? شو قال؟
يعني قالت إن يعني تسمى الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة تبقى على مسمى الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة وتلغى كل المسميات الأخرى.
And so they will call them people with disabilities, and they have eliminated all other names or titles.
طبعا في بعض المسميات هي تتعلق في بعض النظرة للأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة في المجتمعات.
So there are some names that indicate how people perceive or look at those with disabilities in society.
يعني في المغرب العربي في الشمال يقولون المعافون وفي بعض الدول يسمونهم
In Morocco they call them mu'afun.
وبعض
Those who
الدول
have عافية, who have
المتحدون ذوي احتياجات
and those
خاصة.
who
هي
are
مسميات كثيرة جدا
hindered. Yeah.
لكن المسمى الصحيح هو الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة.
هو بارك الله فيكم. The brother, I just want to kind of highlight what brother Salahuddin was referencing, and that is, and I think this is just a general good point for us to consider as we're using terms, because terms are extremely important, and terms, they define the substance and the social constructs that are ultimately built out around a particular topic. And so even the subtlety behind saying a disabled person and a person with a disability, I think that was a point that he was also making, that, you know, is this person disabled, or is this person, does he have a disability? That has its own kind of social construction. So all of us, and including myself, I think can be more thoughtful and wise about the terminology that we use, because it ultimately builds out in the broader society. So let's get a question from the sister side, and we'll come back to the brothers. Any sisters with questions? None? Okay, if you have, figure out your question and we'll get back to you. Ahmed.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Ahmed. Imam, thank you for choosing this topic, and Brother Fawaz, thanks for joining us and sharing your experience. So I'm going to start my story, and this is not a question. This is an experience that has changed my heart. So it started Sunday morning when the community was invited to the hike. We all got up a little bit late on Sunday, all frustrated as average person would be. Got up, getting the kids, changing our baby Yasin's diaper. Here we're all in a rush, making the peanut butter jelly sandwich, tuna fish. Wife is saying, Ahmed, do this, Ahmed, do this. I'm, oh my God, frustrated. 10 o'clock, I'm texting Yusufi, are we late? What's going on, Yusufi? Did you guys start it yet? It was frustrating when I left home. I was like, oh my God, like no more, And then we get to the hike place, Milton. We did our stretching and everything, and we were getting ready to go. And here shows Brother Fawaz with his children, beautiful children, and a cart that Armani was pulling the whole time. And he asked a question. I saw him, I said, this is gonna be tough. He asked the question, are we gonna go? Oh, is this handicap accessible? The question was no, because we were all walking into the woods, hill woods. So, I said, mashallah, wow, how is this brother gonna do? I found out Brother Fawaz was ahead of me, actually. Him and his children, everybody helped, pitched in. I grabbed one of his baby, he brought even this baby, with the little baby's car. It kept falling off the truck, so looks like there was no place to ride that, so I put it in my car. And as we went through, we came back, as Imam said, I saw someone making a tea and coffee. This whole time I'm thinking, how did that brother do with his kids, the carts and everything, And like he said, this is not an easy task. He has a blind, deaf, and autism, like really everything that, it's hard to deal with. And I'm just thinking, oh my God. And I was frustrated leaving the house, and the brother came. Usually we see this, mothers doing it in our society or community or wherever world we're from. It's usually the mother that handles it, and the kids with disease or gifted are always left behind at home. They're not brought to a hike or playground, anything. So, Brother Fawaz, you inspired me. Seeing, showing up like this with your kids, and it was even like rainy condition. And then the best part was the tea and the coffee. Like, are you serious? I mean, we're talking about hot tea, like kettle, fire, and everything. Subhanallah. Wallah, you inspired me.
الحياة تحدي يا أخي العزيز، إحنا ما نقف عندها. الحياة سباق حواجز، إما أن نسقط عند أول حاجز أو نجري إلى النهاية ونفوز.
Life is full of hurdles. You're either gonna, surpass the first hurdle and get to the next hurdle because it's just a sequence of hurdles, or you're gonna fail at the first hurdle and just stop at that point.
والله سعيد جدا. والله يعني لو يعلم الملوك والشيوخ والرؤساء ما أعيش من سعادة ولذة، والله لا جلدون عليها في السيوف.
He says, Wallahi, if the kings and the rulers only knew how happy I was with the life that I have, then they would fight me with their swords.
أنا أعيش لوحدي ومعي 3 أولاد هايبر أكتف.
He says, I live by myself and I have 3 boys who are extremely hyperactive.
أطبخ وأغسل وأنظف البيت وأقوم كل الواجبات.
I cook and I clean the home, and I take care of all of the needs of the home.
وفنان في الطبخ. شوفوا طبخاتي على الانستغرام.
And you can see his cooking on Instagram.
وأعمل كيك وأعمل حاجات حلوة
and he
كمان.
makes cakes and nice things as well.
ليش؟
MashaAllah.
لأن أنا أحب الأولاد هذول.
Why? Because he says, I love these children.
وأبدع في العمل معاهم.
And I bring my full creative
دائما
spirit
أقول
to them.
إذا إحنا نحب الشيء نبدع فيه.
He says, I always say, if we love something, we will bring our full creative spirit to it. MashaAllah, barakallahu feekum. And Ahmed touched upon a few very beautiful points, but really, one of the great sources of inspiration was seeing Brother Fawaz bring his children to this gathering. It was really unexpected for everyone who was there. And like Ahmed said, and this is one of the social defects I would say we have, is that disabilities or people who have particular challenges within their family, they're generally trained or learned to say, keep your kids at home or keep them hidden. Don't let it be known. And I know this as a fact, as a Shaykh, that in many communities I've been a part of, you'll find that they will purposefully hide the child because of the social stigma of people finding out that you have, a child with a disability. They don't want their own family to be shunned or to be perceived as having a quote-unquote deficiency. But mashallah, Brother Fawaz not only brought his children, but brought them with full spirit. And he lifted the collective spirit of the entire group that was there, mashallah.
يعني أنا أشوف ناس يبكون، وأنا صراحة ما أحب أشوف حد يبكي، بالعكس أنا لما أقول الكلام هذا أبي يعني نعيش الفرحة ونعيش السعادة، يعني هذه بالعكس هذه خبرات جميلة، إحنا نستفيد منها دروس وعبر ونتبادل الخبرات فيما بيننا، لكن إن أحد يحزن ولا يزعل لا. لأن موعود الله سبحانه وتعالى أكبر من الدنيا، إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون.
He said, I see a few people crying, and it's not meant for you to cry, but it's meant for us to be happy together and to be spirited together and to grow together, and so that we live together for the sake of Allah and knowing that ultimately we will collectively return to Allah Jalla wa Ala. أخي فواز، في كثير من الأسئلة على مسألة كيفية مساعدة الآخرين، يعني إنسان يريد أن يساعد إنسان عنده احتياجات ذوي أو أسر أو كذا، كيفية المساعدة، هذا كثير من الأسئلة.
طبعا المساعدة ما يصير أنت تأخذ الشخص معاق من إيده وتقدم له مساعدة دون أن يسأل. إحنا دائما تعلمنا وساعد الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة على أن يساعدوا أنفسهم. إذا طلب المساعدة أقدم له، لكن ما أبادر مثلا أخذ مع إيده أو أدز على عربانته، لأن عربانته أو الكين العصا مالته هي جزء من جسده، وهذا يعني شيء خاص فيه، ما يصير أنا أقدم بدون طلب.
So he's saying that for those who would like to help families or individuals, it is important that you ask what that help looks like or what is entailed in that help, and not to offer help on your own kind of accord without it being requested of you, or you asking what is the help that is needed. Because he says very often, sometimes people will force things, grab a hand, grab a stick, push a wheelchair, do that thinking that this is what is needed or desired, and very often that is not the case. And so it is essential, number one, that you ask from that family or from that person what is the help that is desired.
وأيضا المكفوفين لهم طريقة خاصة، ما يصير أنا أمسك المكفوف من إيده وأقوده، لازم هو يمسكني من الخلف من هنا
So he's saying that ممكن تسوي هذا.
يعني من هنا المكفوف كيف المسكه الطريقه
نعم.
هذه.
Let the blind person.
يمسكني بالطريقه هذه.
Yeah, let the blind person hold on, not you push the blind person, but you put your arm and they hold on. نعم.
ومتى ما طلب مني لكن انا ما يعني اقدم شيء لم يطلب.
And I shouldn't يعني لا حتى لا تقدم.
لا
في
يعني
الأول.
انا يعني المبادره جميله بس لازم استاذن او انتظر طلب المساعده.
So either you gently ask if there is help or you wait for a request. And that requires, but let me point this out, brothers and sisters, is and this speaks to the deeper question of community. Very often we don't make ourselves accessible in a way that engenders that a person asks me for help. So very often the way we lead our lives, even within our community, we lead it in a very insular kind of self-oriented way where I'm focusing on myself, getting to my shoes, getting to my car, taking care of my drinks, my food, my children, and not being accessible in a way that someone who may have not asked me for help would now feel that it's okay to ask for help, right? That when I'm present for others and I make myself evidently present, not that I'm kind of being overbearing, but that I'm, how are you, Brother Fawaz? How are things? How are your kids doing? Is there anything that you would want from me or need from me, because we have that rapport, right? It doesn't feel like I'm forcing something on. That's something, brothers and sisters, that we have to cultivate communally. And this is a greater spirit that I want us to really take away from today. And it really was captured in the hike that we did together as a community, that when you get to know someone and you learn their story, then immediately Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala facilitates access points for you to serve others. As we said in previous durus or classes, the greatest, ahabbun nasi ilallah, the most beloved of people to Allah are those anfa'ahum linnas, those who bring the greatest benefit to people. And so as believers, as individuals, we should strive to be in the benefit of others. And unless and until I make myself open for that, I won't receive the requests to help and to facilitate. The nature of our individualistic society says, take care of yourself, worry about yourself, and disregard others. But the Islamic prophetic paradigm is one that says, no, I make myself available and open to others so that they know that I'm there for them. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ says, your brother, the way that they take money from you is simply they put their hand in your pocket. They don't need to wait and ask from you. They just come and put their hand in your pocket and they take what they need. Right? That's a part of that intimate spirit that has to be cultivated. طيب. I have a few, there's some questions. I have questions here, unless sisters want to ask a question or two. Do we have any questions from the audience? So any questions? Yes, go ahead, sister. Different.
Hi there, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
My name is Sarah. First of all, I think your story is really, really inspiring, and God bless you for going through what you went through and continuing to fight on. I know that you mentioned that you worked on a policy level back in Kuwait to work against the stigma and promote more disability-friendly services there. And I was just wondering, have you continued that activism here in the States, especially now that we're getting into kind of choppy waters, if you will, when it comes to insurance coverage and whatnot, because I think that's a huge barrier as well.
هي بتسأل على هل
أنا إنسان كنت مشغول جدا في الكويت، وعلى طول يعني عندي اكتيفيتي وعندي ايفنت وعندي مؤتمرات. لما جيت هنا عشت فراغ، فرحت وتطوعت في بيركنز، كنت يعني أعمل بعض الأعمال خاصة في المعاقين داخل بيركنز المدرسة.
So in Kuwait he was extremely busy and just engaged in every single type of activism, and here in particular, because of the circumstances that he has, with he being the one who's the essential primary caretaker of his 3 children, the extent of what he's able to do at this point is serve in a volunteer capacity within Perkins, which is the school that his children go to.
وأيضا في مركز التدخل المبكر في الأطفال المعاقين.
And also in a center, يعني اسم الcenter?
مركز التدخل المبكر.
Early intervention?
intervention.
Early intervention. Early intervention for children with disability, especially at a younger age. Someone here who messaged me saying that in Delhi they use a term where they call differently abled. So instead of disability or child with disability, they say differently abled, which is also a beautiful kind of way that captures. Yeah. So he's saying that, mashallah, there are so many potential names that can be used, and there's always going to be a back and forth on these names. We can just standardize the name that the UN produced, which is those with disabilities, and inshallah just move towards the actual services of those with disabilities. No. Khair, inshallah. Any final questions or thoughts or reflections? Ahmed? No, his son Ahmed raised his hand that moment, so no. طيب. So inshallah, with that, if there are no more questions or thoughts, I really want to thank our dear brother Fawaz for being so generous in being very open and personal about his story and the experiences that he has had and the growth that he's personally had in his own life and his family, and then ultimately the work that he was able to do in this space. And really, I hope and pray that all of us today take away a essential lesson that is needed, and that is, as a community, we have to begin to cultivate within ourselves a prophetic spirit of care, of compassion, of love, of service that all too often goes missing. As I spoke about in the khutbah today, there's a type of physical disability that may afflict a person, but wallahu alam, the true and real disability is the spiritual disability that many of us have. Allah in the Quran says, إِنَّهَا لَا تَعْمَى الْأَبْصَارِ وَلَكِنْ تَعْمَى الْقُلُوبَ الَّتِي فِي الصُّدُورِ. It's not the eyes that go blind, but rather it is the heart that goes blind. And for many of us, our hearts very often are blind to the beauty of Allah's decree. And that when we see, as Brother Fawaz so eloquently put it, when we see not only the acceptance and the joy and the pleasure, but the beauty and the love in Allah's decree, then we become spiritually healthy and then very capable of giving to others. When you are spiritually beautiful and spiritually oriented in that prophetic light, then we become people who can give a lot to others. And that spiritual orientation is one that comes through living in accordance with the Quran and living in accordance with the Sunnah of our beloved Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, being together with one another in the community, being more present, learning about one another's stories. And one of the big takeaways for me was that very often we see each other, but we genuinely don't take the time to learn about one another. For Brother Fawaz to be in the community for 3 years and for us to not know about his story, that's our fault and our mistake and our problem. And it's a feature of our community in falling short in reaching out and learning and asking. I'm sure many of you today in this room right now have seen each other over the past weeks or months or years and maybe have never even learned that person's name. We have to be proactive. هذا صالح؟ نادي تفضل.
Salim, where are you?
MashaAllah. He's just soothing his son, MashaAllah. May Allah increase him and soothe his heart and soothe his children's heart and his family's heart and grant them all the highest levels of Jannah. And so, if we really take as a practical takeaway the need for all of us to be far more proactive in learning about one another. You see, subhanAllah, just a basic introduction, learning a basic story, spiritually uplifted the entire community. I promise you, if I were to give a talk on this topic, it would not have the impact of just listening to the story of Brother Fawaz as he shares his personal experience. And so may Allah help for us to learn each other's stories and to grow through them. I have a few questions that have come in. Let me just, we have 4 minutes, so we'll close with this. When you accept the qadr of Allah, how was it that moment? What was first thing that did after? يعني متى تقبلت أو رضيت بقضاء الله وقدره؟ يعني هل في إحساسيات معينة أو مشاعر معينة وكيف تفاعلت مع قبول القضاء والقدر؟
طبعا أول طفل معاق جاني 94 وثاني طفل معاق جاني 98.
So 94 was the first child with disability, then 98 was the second.
والثالث كان 2002 والرابع سالم الأحلى وردة في الدنيا 2014.
And then the last was the most beautiful flower in the dunya, and that was Samir. Salim in 2014.
يمكن في ناس يقولون يعني 4 كثير، ليش أنت ما وقفت هذا الشيء؟
Some may say 4 is a lot. Why did you not stop?
أنا فعلا وقفت 98.
He said, truly, I did stop in 98.
بس ما شاء الله كان.
But Allah willed it.
وما لم يشأ لم يكن.
But what Allah wills will be.
كل الاحتياطات ومع
with
كل
every
الأمور
single
اللي نتخذها.
measure that can be taken, Allah will.
الله قال لازم يجي أسامة وسالم.
That you have Usama and Salim.
هذا
Subhanallah.
الشيء بالعكس يزيد من فرحتي ويزيد من سعادتي وبإذن الله يعلو فيني في الجنة.
And this only increases me in joy, and inshallah, I have high hopes that this will be my source of increase in Jannah.
لما يتفكر الإنسان في القرآن وفي الآيات الرسائل اللي الله سبحانه وتعالى يرسلها لي ولك، ما هو يعني كتاب أنزل، هذه رسالة لي أنا فواز ورسالة لك أنت ورسالة لك أنت موجهة.
This is a message for all of us specifically, not just Fawaz.
يمكن أول سنة من حياتي ضعت شوية، كنت تايه.
Maybe the first year I was a little bit lost.
بعدين لما الإنسان يقرب إلى الله سبحانه وتعالى
But then when you come close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala
ويعيش مع القرآن
and you live with the Quran
ويقرأ الآيات
and you read the verses
ويعرف ويتدبر معانيها
and you study and reflect over its meanings,
يوصل إلى قناعة
you will arrive at convictions.
ما أصابك
What has afflicted you
لم يكن ليخطئك
was never going to miss
وما
you,
أخطأك
and what has missed you
لم يكن ليصيبك.
was never to touch you.
فالله سبحانه وتعالى يبتلي الإنسان ليهذب لا ليعذبه.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests you for tahdheeb, for conditioning of yourself, and not to punish you or torture you.
ويعلو درجاته في الجنة.
And inshallah is a source of increase in Jannah.
فالحمد لله متى ما كان الإنسان يحظى في القبول والرضا في هذا الشيء.
Ya Rab, Allahumma ameen. The akhir su'al, inshallah, we'll close with this, which I think is a practical question for us. In terms of activities, برامج في المسجد أو في المجتمع لأولادك أو لأولاد مثل أولادك، ما أحسن وأفضل البرامج الذي ممكن نعطيها للناس أو نؤسسها في المسجد لخدماتهم أو لأي شيء من أنواع الخدمات
يعني
والبرامج؟
بداية أنا أنصح في الجروب ثيرابي.
First, he says, I suggest group therapy.
في كثير من الأسر يكون عندها طفل معاق، خاصة في بداياتهم لما يكونوا شباب ويكون أول طفل يجيهم معاق.
Many families in the community may have a child, this is their first child, or they have a child with disability and they have nowhere to turn or to talk to in terms of, social needs.
مثل ما قلت هذا يسبب صدمة كبيرة جدا.
And this, as he said, causes an initial tremendous trauma.
والصدمة هذه تؤدي إلى الطلاق، ويعني إذا ما كان طلاق ممكن يكون تصدع أسري وتبادل اتهامات في الأسرة.
And he says that very often this trauma can lead towards divorce, and then blames and kind of fights within the family.
علاوة على أنها تسبب أمراض نفسية.
And it can cause psychological or mental problems or mental
بس لما
challenges.
يكون في جروب ثيرابي
But when you have group therapy,
ممكن الأسرة تتعرف إن ما هم الوحيدين اللي الله سبحانه وتعالى أعطاهم هذا الشيء.
when you learn that others have this same particular challenge, you realize that we're not the only ones. And subhanAllah, on that note, after the khutbah today, and if you haven't listened to it, please go back and listen to it. I can't tell you the amount of people who came to me saying, Jazakallah khair, Shaykh, and these are people that I've known, but they've never shared this with me. Many of them, some I've known, many I didn't, but the amount who came and told me, I have a mother, a brother, a father, a child with disabilities, I was overwhelmed. And I said, subhanAllah, the amount of people, even in our own masjid, in our own community, who attend the khutbah Jum'ah, who have children or family members with disability.
ولما يكون يعني الحالات المتشابهة تجتمع في مكان تشتت المشاعر السلبية التي ممكن يحملونها.
When people of like circumstances come together, it breaks down the negative feelings or emotions that come to the person who has this particular challenge.
علاوة على أنه ممكن أيضا يتبادلون الخبرات والتجارب.
And then you can also exchange with one another experiences and know-how and so on and so forth.
وأيضا هذا يساهم في تطور المعاق وتطور الأسرة والمجتمع.
And then this can also lead towards the growth and development of the child or the person with disability, and then the growth of the society.
يعني
أي برامج أخرى لأولادك مثلا تريد مثلا تراها في المسجد أو في
لا أولادي أنا ما أبي شيء مخصص لهم.
لا بس حتى تنصحنا
يعني أنا قلت الجروب ثيرابي هذا الشيء
جميل
حلو،
جميل
لكن
جميل.
في ممكن نسوي اكتيفيتي، ممكن نسوي أنشطة لهم. يعني في المستقبل ممكن نقترح، بس الآن ما أستطيع أن أقول شيء. لكن أنا أقول لو كان في شيء ممكن نسويه، أنا حريص جدا على أن يكون في جروب ثيرابي للمصلين يعني الكوميونتي.
Barakallahu feekum wa jazakumullah khair. We want to thank our dear brother Fawaz al-Hasban. You can also research some of his work on Google and see what he's done in Kuwait. Let's close with a dua for our community and as well for our dear brother Fawaz. Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك عليه في الأولين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك عليه في الآخرين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك عليه في الملأ الأعلى إلى يوم الدين. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have mercy upon us collectively. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to facilitate our affairs, to make easy the tests that we are challenged by. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us a beautiful prophetic spirit that is infused with love and care and compassion and mercy and growth and acceptance of your decree, Ya Allah. We ask you to make us a people who are lovingly accepting of your decree and who are inspired to grow through the decrees that you have decreed for us, and to grow not only in our personal lives within our families, but as a broader society and a community. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless our dear brother Fawaz, to increase him in acceptance of your decree. We ask Allah to bless him and increase him in every possible way, in health and in wealth and in wellness and in goodness, and to unite him with his family in Kuwait. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring them together as one family so that they can grow together and love together and serve with one another. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make easy his affairs and to facilitate for him every possible route of ease and facilitation in this dunya, whether it is through this community or beyond this community. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant him the highest levels of Jannah, to be in the company of our beloved Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and to be in the company of Sayyidina Ayyub, who was tested in every way as well. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to uplift all of us to be in the company of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless our community, to raise the ranks of our community, to guide this community, to serve in a way that is pleasing to you, Ya Allah. We ask you, Ya Allah, to use us for your religion and to use us in the service of your creation. Ya Allah, we ask you to use us and not replace us. Ya Allah, open up our hearts to the vestiges of beauty that you have in store for those who are in loving surrender to you. Ya Allah, we ask you to help us and to guide us and to aid us and to uplift us. وصل اللهم على سيدنا محمد وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. بارك الله فيكم وجزاكم الله خير.